Yeah, it more sounds like pro-choice is really anti-choice or pro-force or like anti-support.
Yeah.
To like that's. I mean, to not to have coerced abortions, that is like reminiscent of other countries that, coerce abortion, like send people to.
Yeah,
Like,
well, it's illegal. Like it's illegal, and I think you're talking about there's certain situations where it's like, okay, it's a financial reason and it's a housing reason, and obviously we can provide resources to a woman in that situation. But I think even exactly if it's like coerced and they're being told like I'm going to kill you or I'm going to throw you out of my house, like. One thing that just made me think of is the Justice Foundation. I know they have their center against forced abortions, and that's a resource for women who may feel that they're being coerced into an abortion. Say they have a boyfriend who's like, even I'm going to break up with you if you don't have this baby. The Center for the Justice Foundation and their Center Against Forced Abortions has resources for that.
Yeah, they have an affidavit that a woman can sign. So that you could present to a pregnancy center to say, I don't want this abortion. And I remember we had a real heartbreaking situation here in I live in the suburbs of Chicago, a suburb called Aurora, and Aurora is home to one of the largest abortion clinics in the country. Actually, I think it might even be the largest now because there was a bigger one in Texas that just shut down. I'm not sure about that, but it's huge and very, very busy. And one day we got a call from a pregnancy center in Indiana. A client had just left who was heading to Illinois to get an abortion that she didn't want. And they had the affidavit she had signed saying, I do not want this abortion. My mother's trying to force me. She was inside the Planned Parenthood facility in Aurora when I got this information, and I contacted the police, and it was so hard to get them to even call a squad out there. I finally convinced them to do that. So I'm having to fight with the police to care about this. An officer comes out, and it was pulling teeth to say, look, I've got the girl's signature right here. She's in there and she doesn't want this abortion. He finally went into the place, got her out, sent her off with her sister, getting her away from the mom who's trying to force her into the abortion, so that she can get some distance from the mom. And the sister was trying to support her. So we had a brief victory where the abortion was stayed for a few weeks. But later, the pregnancy center in Indiana told us that the mom finally prevailed over the girl, and they got the abortion at the Planned Parenthood Center in Merrillville, Indiana. This was before abortion was banned in Indiana, of course. This was before the Dobbs ruling had come down. So that was a tremendous heartbreaker because we worked so hard. I mean, I was eating breakfast when I got the call, and I jumped out of my house, jumped in the car, ran off to Planned Parenthood. I'm calling the lawyers. I'm calling the police. Yeah. I'm trying to talking to the pregnancy center. I mean, I had 4 or 5 different people, attorneys at the Thomas More Society that helps us to get the police to be responsible for things like this and to defend the rights of pro-life activists. We had them working. I mean, so many people were trying to save this one baby's life and to help this one mom to be able to make the choice she really wanted. And we were able to do that for a short time, but ultimately we weren't there. We didn't have enough. Maybe with the resources available in Indiana, maybe the legal situation, or with coercive abortion, maybe we don't have strong enough laws on this stuff. We weren't able to save that baby. And it was a heartbreaker when we found out that the woman had actually, because at first we thought we'd saved a life that day.
Yeah.
We did save a life that day, but not forever. And I believe that all those efforts are still worth it. I think God cares about that type of work. And we learned a little bit about how to address those situations. And we were able to reach out to our tribal counselors across the country and, help them be better prepared so they're not suddenly blindsided by this kind of thing. So good things came out of it, but a life was lost and our mom was hurt that day.
So I think it just shows obviously we talk about it, in the statistics, but I think sometimes like the stories, like the fact that you actually have had a situation where this has happened and a woman has been coerced into an abortion. And even though you guys tried to stop it, like it just shows like this is happening every day across the country.
I was having a conversation with my hairdresser a couple months ago. She's pro-choice. And the issue of abortion had come up once or twice before when we talked about my work, but it had always been kind of like, we're not, we never really talked about it. It was a little uncomfortable. But for some reason that one day we started chatting about it some more, and the issue of unwanted abortion came up. She was telling me, and she told me that she had a friend who had an abortion in high school under pressure from her mom. She didn't want the abortion. She did not want it. 100% was under control of her parents and forced to get this abortion. Years later, she married. She had a baby. That baby turned out to be disabled, very, very severely disabled, and is in an institution. And she says her friend every day, maybe that's some exaggeration, but she told me that every day her friend says that she deserved to have a disabled child because of the abortion that she had. She thought she was being punished. So my friend who was pro-choice was very, very open to hearing about unwanted abortions because she had a friend who'd been through one and who it had hurt so badly. So even as she was defending abortion, and she herself had been a victim of sexual assault, and that was an issue very important to her, abortion in the cases of sexual assault. Nevertheless, she was very open to talking about how we can protect women from unwanted abortion. So I have, in my own experience, I have strong proof that the stories we tell can lead to building common ground on this issue and building bridges so we can have more conversations and talk about other kinds of abortion and other sorrows of abortion that we could work on in the future.
Yeah. Eric, do you think it ties into like coerced abortion through abortion pills, like just, unknowingly taken, or even coerced abortion because of sex trafficking? What about those things? Yeah.
Once you've opened the door to talking about unwanted abortion, now we can talk about how this touches other areas. I already mentioned the area of offering support to moms. Once we know that 2/3 of women likely would choose something else if they were given help, that inspires us to give help. That inspires us to give help both through private charity and through public channels. To offer, like one of the things Senator Josh Hawley has been very active on is the area of flexible work hours. You wouldn't think, when you think of abortion, you don't think of flexible work hours, but in fact, for a mom who cannot schedule a prenatal visit ever because her schedule is going to be set a few days before she has to work, a pregnancy test is a test of her employment. You're pregnant now. You cannot schedule a prenatal test. Your boss won't let you. How are you going to even think about saying yes to that pregnancy? Abortion is the only sensible thing to do if you don't have a strong ideological reason against it, that you've been formed to believe in. So areas like that are places where we could try to help, where we can have policies that we wouldn't have thought of as affecting a woman's choice to get an abortion or not, but that actually do play an important role. The area of abortion pills, that's another, as you raised, it's another very important one. Once we've established with somebody that there's such a thing as unwanted abortion, then we can say, when you think about it, these pills present a big problem because a boyfriend can sneak a mifepristone pill into his girlfriend's, mashed potatoes.
And this has happened, yeah.
And there was a story in the news today about I think it's a Texas lawsuit of a woman who's suing her ex-boyfriend because he put it in her hot chocolate. It was coerced abortion. I'm like, that's insane. It happens all the time.
If you're truly pro-choice, then how can you support the ease with which people can buy these pills online, sell them to other people, get them from unscrupulous providers, lie about being pregnant to get pills that you're going to use for something else? It opens the door to people recognizing the need for other kinds of pro-life legislation they would never have thought they might support.
Yeah, absolutely. So I love what you said about work structure. I think that's something, in the Western world that is different than a lot of places. Is we have this very strict 9 to 5 schedule that everybody's busy all the time. But I'd love to hear, more of your thoughts on that, of how you think, based on Josh Hawley's work, and just like your thoughts on how we could structure work better for mothers.
Well, I have some pretty wild thoughts about this, but I'll say that I start from the perspective of the father. I've got 6 daughters myself. My wife and I had 2 boys, and then we had 6 girls in a row. So for many, many years, we experienced the phenomenon of a little girl becoming a little woman. And I can remember some of those days when I realized one of my daughters was having her first period. I know from listening to my daughters and talking with my daughters that the workplace has never accommodated what it really means to be a woman. Simply accommodating menstrual cycle itself, that every month most women are going to go through this period where going through a regular 9 to 5 day is not going to be so easy for them. And yet we stick with this rigid 40-hour week. We have these daytime hours. When we talk to women and ask them what they want, most moms want to work. Some can't because they don't have the opportunity. They're only able to work part-time. There's opportunities for them. Others are forced to work full-time when they don't want to make ends meet. So we have a very far way to go yet to accommodate those needs. Moms need to be able to take their kids for pediatric care. They need to be able to take care of sick kids. They need to have kind of flexible work hours. They need to be able to predict when they're going to work so that they can plan prenatal visits and care for their children. If they have disabled children, they need help with those areas too. As a society, we are very far from incorporating women into our workforce the way that we should. Another idea that I've heard some sort of Christian feminists talk about is the idea of changing the entire pattern of our working lives. Is it fair that, to say to a girl who's like 21, 22 years old, who's just gotten her degree, but is also at the height of her fertility, as far as it being healthy time for her to have a baby, is it fair to say to her, okay, forget about that, start a career, stop a career, do something else. You've lost all of your opportunities. Oh, maybe you can work part-time later in something that isn't what you studied. That's not fair. We need to set up pathways of promotion that take into account people pausing in their work life to care for their children or to care for their elderly parents, or even for dads at times to be the primary caregiver. There are ways that we could accommodate families so much better in our society, but our society is not organized around the family. Our society is organized around something else. Some people, Orthodox thinker Paul Kingsnorth would argue that what our society is really organized around is the 7 deadly sins. It's about consumption, it's about gluttony, lust, sloth, pride is very important to us. We have an entire culture that seems to be built around something other than caring for one another, and encouraging families to form and be robustly able to take care of themselves. That gets us into all kinds of different political areas, and I don't have all the answers, but I do see that this is not a society organized around Christian principles.
Yeah. Or to
I think what you said about you go, Cindy.
Okay, just to put people first, like to value people over the dollar, right? So yeah.
Absolutely. What I was going to say is, I think what you said about, a girl who's early in her career, early 20s, like that struggle of like family versus work is so real. And I mean, I'm 24, and I think that that's something that I've dealt with myself, of like kind of that, like that meeting point of like, okay, yes, I want to have a family, but yes, also having that career. And I know many women do, like I've been at various talks and things like that where women are like, yeah, I'm in college, I'm getting this degree and I want to work, but I also like want to have a big family. And I love that idea of opportunities for promotion, even if you do take a career break.
I don't know what that looks like. I don't know how we do it, but I think if there was some social structure or cultural, expectation that, you can leave the workforce or partially leave the workforce for a while, and then come back into it in a more full-throated way later on. I think that would be
Mhm.
more encouraging to people, that they know I'm not giving up everything. Our society cares. I'm going to be able to rejoin the workforce more robustly at another time, but we're just not offering that.
Yeah.
It's get
Especially
in
if it
now,
wasn't
get
like,
promoted now, get your house now,
yeah.
or give up and forget about it.
And I think it's kind of looked down upon, to stay home with your kids or to be a stay-at-home mom. Like, I think a lot of people, like, in the world are like, oh, well, why don't you just work, or why don't you just put your kids in daycare, even though daycare is like incredibly expensive. Like,
yeah, if I can digress a little bit, I think that there's a phenomenon going on right now where we have already sort of culturally downgraded the family. I'll give an example of that. The other day I was riding, my son had left his scooter at my house. He has an electric scooter, and I was scooting around my neighborhood, and the battery started to die out. So I turned around and I was heading down this bike path it was the quickest way to get back home. And there was a family ahead of me. It was a mom with a stroller, and then 3 little boys on bicycles. And 2 of the boys were way up ahead, and one of them had already waved at me when I passed them before. And the dad turned as I was coming up really slowly on my scooter. He came up and he says, oh, excuse us, as if they were the problem. And I said, no, excuse me. Just, you guys are cool. You're fine. The mom sort of like calls to the boys, hey, Jeremy, get out of the way. It was as if like this encounter with some weird middle-aged man on a scooter was this big, crisis that they had to keep me from being incommoded in any way by their family. Like their family was a sort of embarrassment. And I was really trying to make them realize that's not the case. And as I passed by the mom, I said, hey, ma'am, you have a beautiful family. And she said, thank you. She said, oh, thank you. But it was very official. Like, oh, thank you. She was very serious and like worried about her kids being in my way. That should not be how our world is. Our world should be prioritized. The children are the ones who have the right to be on the bike path with their cute little bikes. I'm the weirdo who should accommodate them. I'm the one who should be apologizing to them. I see this everywhere. Parents kind of pulling their children away from the adults that they might be putting out of somehow when on the sidewalk or at the ice cream store or even at the playground, and I think that comes from an idea that if you have children in a world with abortion, that's on you. You're the one making the choice to not do the sensible thing and get an abortion and carry on with your career. There's a very wise Catholic feminist, Leah Libresco-Sargent, who talks about this a lot, about how we're kind of entering almost a post-humanist world in which the facts of biological reality, the fact that a woman gives birth and a woman needs to breastfeed, are not even being acknowledged. If you've had a baby, that's on you. We're not going to provide a breastfeeding place for you because you're inconveniencing all of us with your annoying choice to have a baby. That's not how it used to be. We used to see every single child as society's child. We have a responsibility. Yeah. Even Hillary Clinton, it does in fact take a village in a certain sense, because the village has to accept motherhood as something that it values in order to make a place for that mom. We're not doing that now. We're saying that every family's on their own. They're the ones who chose to have a baby when they could have made a different choice. And it really does put the entire burden of everything onto the family and onto the parents. And that's just too much.
Yeah, not treating children as a treasure.
A treasure, not just for the parents who want them, but for the entire society. And that means every child should matter to every one of us.
Yeah. When I think about growing up in the 90s, we heard about girl power, and that was like, probably getting a career or doing jobs that men do. And I don't know if girl power included, being a mother or being a wife or.
Well, Joe Rogan calls it a superpower. Joe Rogan, who's pro-choice, says that a woman's ability to have a baby is a superpower. Wow. So I hope I get the chance to talk to Joe about that someday, because he's got contradictory ideas, but he's on the right track there.
I feel like that would be an interesting podcast.
Yeah,
Joe Rogan.
So I think somewhere young girls were kind of brainwashed to think, to be the best woman, I need to, work hard and have a great career and have equal wages with men, and that is going to fulfill me, and like erasing, delaying marriage, delaying motherhood, and I'm I'm in my late 30s and we don't have any children yet. So, but that I went with that, success in the academic way. And so.
Well, the weirdo lesbian art critic, Camille Paglia, who's an atheist and hardcore pro-abortion. She believes in abortion up till the day of birth. But she also strongly believes that girls should be told the factual truths about how hard it is to get pregnant as you delay this, the start of motherhood. And we're telling women, go have a career, but not being honest with them about the limits of fertility that the biology imposes. So there are some weird voices that are agreeing with us sometimes on some of these things. And I know my own daughters have talked a lot about that. My 3 oldest daughters are career women. They've chosen careers that are in the kind of care services. I've got a nurse and a sign language interpreter and a teacher amongst my daughters, my 3 oldest daughters. And, but they especially resent the push towards STEM. They're like, science and technology is fine, but what about the arts? Yeah. What about motherhood? What about?
Well, the problem is if you push everyone into STEM, then there's just not going to be any more jobs in STEM. Like, I know so many engineers that have struggled to get jobs because there's just not that many engineering jobs. If you're just producing all these engineers every year, you're at some point you run out of engineering jobs.
Computer science is going to be handled by robots very soon. So
exactly,
And sometimes, like the STEM, they kind of block out boys. Like they're like, oh, too many boys, but like we need more girls, but like.
It's interesting that they complain about like a number of women doctors there are, whatever, I think right now there are more women in medical school than men, but no one's sitting there complaining about all the men who are working on oil rigs. No one complains about how there aren't any women up on electric poles in the middle of a thunderstorm fixing the power. Those injustices and imbalances don't ever seem to get any attention. So when convenient, we'll let men be different from women, but otherwise. No.
Well, this has been such a great talk. I do want to get to some more of the questions that we talked about, such as what can we do besides outright banning abortion? Like, what other avenues are there? How can we advocate for unborn children? Yeah.
Well, I think we've hinted at some of the answer to that question already. That's something the pro-life movement is struggling with right now, is trying to figure out what else we can do within the law. We've got these referendums that have blocked us off in certain states. We have some states that have banned abortion, some that have limited it pretty strictly. We have others like my home state of Illinois that are aggressively, trying to expand abortion and trying to force medical practitioners to be involved with it, and, STEM funding from pregnancy care centers and all the rest of it. And so how much more can we do to legally protect unborn children? Maybe not a lot more, but of course we still fight, we still work, we're still curious and creative. But what else can we do? Well, we can talk to our friends and neighbors about those unwanted abortions and spread the word about this very important phenomenon that opens so many doors and builds so much common ground, and that really educates people about the truth about abortion that they haven't been told. I think we need to do much more creatively with the law to offer assistance. To limit the ability of employers to force women into abortions, or to, softly or hardly, whether it's just through not ever giving, people the kind of flexibility that they need to plan their lives, or whether it's through an employer actually saying, get the abortion, I'm going to fire you. We can enact some laws in those areas. I think we've got to do something with our healthcare system, because that is the number one concern of moms, is healthcare for their kids. And one of my daughters right now doesn't have health care. She's ironically my nurse daughter doesn't have a health care plan right now because it's so expensive. These are areas where it's hard for us sometimes, because so many of us in the pro-life movement are conservative, but we have to step back and say, what are we trying to conserve? Are we trying to conserve some kind of free, sort of mythical free market world where, we're staying out of the way and just letting the economy make our decisions. Because if we're going to just let the economy decide, we're going to have lots of abortions, because abortion is good for the economy. That's what our society seems to think anyway. For the short term, it seems to be. So, can we think outside the box? Can we set aside some of our own preconceived notions about our politics or our political ideologies and think of ways we could actually practically help? So I want to be highlighting, the efforts of states to help in areas other than just, limiting abortion. What are we doing to actually help moms?
Yeah. And that to not let the predominant narrative be abortion is the best option, or that, let the narrative be people care about you and we want to help you, and your life matters, and being a mother is awesome.
It's also really hard too, and I think we've got to do something, and I don't know what it is, but we've got to do something to change the kind of cultural attitudes around parenthood and around the meaning of life itself. Being a parent is hard. It's hard work. You have to put yourself aside for decades at a time sometimes, to care for children. And, how do you ask people to do that? You've got to give them something else. And if we have a society that just doesn't value the blessings of family and the difficulties and doesn't have a kind of an embrace of challenge and of hard work and sees value in suffering, it's going to be very difficult. So it's a much bigger cultural transformation that needs to take place, but it begins with us understanding what our real values are and then trying to have a conversation with people where we share that passion for life and that passion for family.
Yeah. Of marriage, of fatherhood, of, So, okay. Let's hear the Bible verse that you selected today, Eric.
Well, with the National Day of Remembrance coming up so soon, I want to focus on our Lord's words from the Beatitudes, Matthew 5:4. Blessed are they who mourn, for they will be comforted. We are people who mourn. We are people who have a broken heart for unborn babies. We need to mourn for them. And I think we forget about that sometimes. When we go out to an abortion clinic to pray, maybe to offer help to women, sometimes it feels like we're not having an impact, but we always are. Every time you hold an unborn child in your heart, especially when you're out there outside the abortion facility, when that child is dying, you're doing a good thing. You're doing something God asks you to do. Blessed are they who mourn, for they will be comforted. And I've talked to so many people who, like me, go out and do sidewalk counseling at abortion facilities. And it's the uncanniest thing. It's so hard to be out there, and you have to screw yourself up to do it. But coming away after your hour or 2 hours out there, you feel I feel often such a sense of peace and satisfaction for having been there. Even if I don't pass out a single flyer, I was there for the children who died that day. There are children dying every single day, as many as 3,000 a day sometimes. Let's remember them every day and think about what their lives meant. Because even if it was short, their lives meant something. And if we can bring ourselves to love those children and mourn for those children, I think that opens our hearts to really bring a positive and compassionate and understanding message to our society.
Awesome. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted, Jesus says. Yeah. Amen. May it be so. Well, thank you so much, Eric, for all that you do and all that your family does and you shared with us today. God bless Pro-Life Action League.
Well, God bless you guys and the Ever Living podcast. I think you're doing great work, and it's a real honor to be on with you today. And if people want to get in touch, they want to get involved, visit us at prolifeaction.org. We'll be happy to have a conversation and put you to work.
Great.
Awesome.
Thanks, Eric.
Thanks so much, Eric.
Okay, just want to plug the 2025 New Hampshire Right-to-Life Benefit Banquet. It's on October 16th. And our speaker, if you could scroll down, is Darlene Pollock. She's our keynote speaker. and she is pro-life and former vice president of Save the One, and she's part of an anti-trafficking organization. So it's going to be an amazing speech. So tickets are still available. Please visit nhrtl.org. You can get tickets for yourself, for a whole table, for your church. You can sponsor the banquet as a business, or anything helps to support the pro-life work in New Hampshire. All right.
She's an amazing speaker. I've heard her speak before, and she tells her story about how she herself was trafficked, and she actually escaped trafficking through a pregnancy resource center. They helped her get out of human trafficking. So definitely a powerful speaker, and definitely worth coming to the banquet and listening to her speak. So
yeah, if we scroll down a little bit more, here you can see where you can buy your ticket, become a sponsor. There's still early bird tickets before August 28th. So just like a week or so. So get your early bird price in. It's going to be at the Manchester Country Club. All right, everybody. Thanks for listening. This was thanks for Eric Scheidler coming to the pod today. And hopefully you can get on Rogan someday. And this is just a stepping stone. All right. God bless you.
Thank you.
Okay, goodbye, everyone.
bye. Thank you for listening to the Ever Living Podcast, a podcast by New Hampshire Right-to-Life, New Hampshire's oldest and most active pro-life organization. You can learn more about our work and learn how to get involved at www.nhrtl.org. If you would like to donate to our mission, you can make a donation at www.nhrtl.org/donate. See you next week. May God bless you and be very near to you, and may you be ever living.